get the recording started and let us know. Okay, it looks like we are recording them live. So,
Yeah.
Chair Manning, do you want to call the meeting to order?
All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m.
I can call roll if you wish. So,
Yes, please.
okay, so Chair Manning,
Present.
Sherry Harper DeVos,
Present.
Michael Fuller is busy tonight. John Steele is not present. Dan Salty is not here either. Kirsten Solberg.
Present.
And Brad Stewart.
Present.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then also note that staff members John Floyd and Lynn Schroeder are here, as is our mayor as well. So,
All right. So I don't have the agenda for this meeting. I didn't see where that was
Oh,
today.
okay. I can email you a link really fast. So it's also on the website. So I will, give me 2 seconds. Okay, that should be in your inbox shortly. The next item in the meantime is
Okay.
public comment related to items not on the agenda. And we don't have anyone present for that. So, okay. Let me know when you receive the agenda, Chair.
It's opening right now.
Okay, great.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay.
So item number 3 is approval of draft meeting notes from June 18th, 2024.
I move to approve the meeting notes from June 18th, 2024.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Okay.
4th item is discussion of McLean House National Recognition or nomination, I should say.
Lynn?
Hi, Chair Manning and HRB members. I want to let you know the status of the McLean House. As you know, this is the city's application to list the McLean House on the National Register. But this document that you're looking at is the Kristen submitted the draft nomination to the state SATSB board, and they're going to review it on October 18th. And as part of that review, they want the local certified local government to respond to the application with their evaluation of whether it meets the national register criteria. So you see that on, I think it's page 3, that there's an evaluation form, and they want your opinion on the integrity and the description and the significance, the facts and sources and technical concerns, and if you find that this document has enough supporting material. So we supplied you with, this is the draft that Kristen submitted to SHPO. SHPO gave their comments back, and so she rewrote it. So the document you saw in February, this is an update from that. So go ahead and take a look at this, and next month we'll come back and ask for you to give your opinion and about whether this nomination meets the National Register criteria or if you don't support it.
I'm not sure which page 3 I should look at. Is
Oh.
the document dated August 8th?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then there's page 1 of 2, and then there's 3 where it has summary paragraph and narrative description.
No. You have this? Yeah, I have the update. Yeah, it's this. So it's the evaluation form that it's submitted in front of the draft nomination. Yeah, that's the evaluation.
yeah,
That we're
this,
going to be filling out next month. Great.
Thank you.
yeah, this just arrived pretty late. So we got this last week. We didn't have a lot of time to really prep for this. So we thought we'd just give it to you a month early and let you look at it. So.
And then for our recommendation, are we just sort of initialing that we say it's okay?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So we'll do that. And then we're also going to draft up a letter of support, since I know the group has been in support of the nomination in the past.
Okay.
And so essentially, this is the final sort of, checklist before the state makes a vote in Astoria in a couple months. So, yeah.
Right. So the city council voted and signed a letter of support as owners of the building back in March. And now this is coming to you as a historic landmark committee for your just review and support to the state. So that's what your role will be this month. And we'll have a letter of support from the HRB if you choose to support the nomination. And then if all goes well on October 18th, it'll move forward to the National Park Service, who has 90 days to review and decide whether or not the McLean House will be listed. And after that, we can celebrate.
Great. That's great.
So is that a letter that we need to draft and submit, or is that a letter that we just need to sign?
Well, last time when we did the city hall, I drafted something for you to sign, which was basically, yes, we support this. And I can do that, or you can draft it in the next meeting and I can write it up and you can sign. But you need to have the letter to them the letter of support by the 18th of October.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the 17th. Sorry, wrong.
Okay.
The 17th.
Okay.
As part of the package next month, we would have that letter ready for you to look at so you could wordsmith
Yeah.
a draft. Excuse me.
The cover letter does say October 7th. Is that something else? Is that reference thing? Please return form.
Oh, yeah.
Correspondence.
You're right, you're right. Thank you for drawing that. Yes, we need to submit our stuff to them by the 7th. Have it by the 17th. They can burn it out. So it does have to happen in the September meeting decision.
I don't think there's any controversy.
No.
I think we're all pretty much in favor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just sort of like protocol or.
It's just process. I mean, if this were not something that we submitted, if it was just a house, this would be the first time you saw it, potentially, and then we want to have this chance to review and give your opinion as the certified local government. But just because it's our nomination, our building, we've seen it a few times. Okay,
So Lynn, if you're going to draft that letter, could we have that like maybe a few days before our meeting, just in case there's something we need to change or?
Yeah, you should get the material, meeting materials 6 days in advance, but if you want it sooner, I can get it, I can draft something sooner.
6 days, so. No, 6 days should be fine.
Yeah,
That'd be a full month before the October date.
yeah, the next meeting is the 17th, so it'd be around
Oh,
September
yeah.
11th or so.
Okay,
That's our general target minimum for getting packets out, is 6
Okay.
days in advance, so.
Is it possible to sign it remotely or do you have to? Does that work?
We can do a remote signature, so, or, yeah, just, we can figure that out, but yeah, so.
Cause I'm out of September.
Okay, and actually typically just the chair would sign, but since you're gone, someone else could sign, so yeah, so really almost,
Yeah.
yeah,
Who's the vice chair?
I'll have to double check on that, so,
I don't think we have one yet.
I think, Danny was, and then he resigned, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I think we currently have someone.
And also I could sign it that week of the 23rd also and still have time to get it submitted for October, so.
Correct, yeah, when you're back.
Yeah.
Also, for the record, I want to note that John Steele has entered the room, so.
Okay,
I do have a question. Because everyone is so familiar with the house,
Mhm.
the process is a little bit.
Yes.
So my question is, if there is a property that we are not familiar with and we receive this, what is the next step if we are to meet? So you're asking for the next time we meet to either approve or deny or submit our evaluation, right? So what would we do? Because we
Yeah.
definitely want to have a conversation in between this meeting and next meeting. If again, if we're a different house.
Yeah, if we're a different house, I think actually you would have seen this already, because this is a form from the state. I think we probably would have gone through a local listing process first.
Mhm.
And so you would have had to go through our own local process in order to familiarize ourselves with the house. And, or the structure, whatever it be.
Yeah.
And then I think we would have that chance.
Okay.
Then this comes from the state once we pass it up to the state. So I think, under that process, I think now that I think about it, you would have seen something similar before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I would have seen how be able to review for
Correct.
wording and typos and all that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
I've been on the board for a year. This is the first one that I've seen. It's not very common.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, usually it's the city proposing our own buildings for registry, national register. We did do those workshops and there was one homeowner who seemed pretty excited about it, but I think that they were excited about maybe local listing because I think people get a little nervous with the national listing of their restrictions they might have. So this is a little more feasible, attainable for someone.
So yeah, in the meantime, for the new members, I think the house has a really fascinating history. So that was talked about in the previous. It's quite a. It's not just a pretty structure. There's some fascinating history associated with it. So.
It's getting like a medical listing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just architecture.
Yeah, it's actually, Dr. McLean influenced contemporary healthcare structures. So it's a very interesting nexus of sort of past history and current practice. So. Yeah. Okay, so stay tuned.
cool. All right, so item 5 is the discussion debrief of July 16th walking tour of Willamette Commercial Design District. I do have that video of old Willamette, but I can't share it with anybody because the person who owns it on Facebook has it on, there's there's a Facebook group called Gone But Not Forgotten. It's, kind of an obituary one for Westland residents, Westland high school residents, I guess. And it's part of that. So what I've done is I've emailed her to see if she could share that publicly. If not, send me the link and then I'll send it out to you for that. But there's 2 different videos of old Willamette. It's pretty cool.
Okay. That'd be fabulous. Yeah, if she needs somewhere to upload it, we can maybe figure something out with the city, if she's willing to share it with the city as well. Directly with us. So we could do some sort of file transfer arrangement. So happy to sort of follow up on that. I put this item on here because I thought our July tour was quite engaging in terms of learning about downtown and talking about some of the issues. I didn't really structure this too much, but I think just looking ahead to the joint meeting with council, I just thought about, was there anything you sort of individually or collectively observed about this that sort of made you want to sort of, I guess, influenced your thoughts about the current standards and about future work of the board? I know we all learned a lot, and some people had very strong opinions about how the entrances of new buildings are interfacing with the street, things like that. But I don't want to talk here too much. I want to sort of hear what the board thought about the meeting. So,
Well-
I think I noticed that there were fewer historic structures there than I originally
Oh.
thought.
yeah.
Which is good to know if one's from the historic review.
Well, actually, I take that as a success, because if you didn't know they weren't historic and we made them look that way, then that's probably, we're doing what we should be doing.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
And then another thing I noticed was that some of the facades had lumber that had obviously been cut in a lumber mill 100 years ago. And one of my pet peeves is the composite lumber that has the fake wood stamp on it. I just hate it. I just wish it weren't even
Yeah.
made.
Yeah.
And I really don't think it has a place on historic structures.
Yeah.
But that was an example that I saw even from a pretty good distance across the street, that you could tell that siding was cut in a mill a long, long time ago when technology was very different.
Yeah.
As a newcomer to the board, I thought it was my first meeting, if you will. It was
That's true.
awesome.
That's true.
Just the stories, James and a couple of the other gentlemen, John, I believe, there was just wonderful stories. And I think the stories are really what make it. So it was very helpful to learn a lot of the structures and history. Just kind of dig in day one. It's great.
Thank you.
So I would echo those points as well. I thought you guys did a great job of showing us around, and James has a lot of history just from growing up in Westland, et cetera. And yes, there were a few legitimate, historic buildings, but I think the whole area hangs together. And I guess one of the things that I was questioning in my mind is that Western false front what helps it hang together? Or is it just quality of construction? Is it just buildings that fit within that, quality of construction? I don't know if it's necessarily the Western false front, but I felt like it hangs together, right? It
Yeah.
seems like it fits. I'm not sure that sticking to that Western false front is the answer. Definitely might help in that that's part of what brings it together, but there may be other ways to do that as well.
I would agree with you, Brad. I think as we went through the tour, there was 2 legit false front buildings and a couple that were kind of a faux false front buildings that had been added over the years. And the rest of them are, I don't want to say historically accurate, but they have detail and they have shape and they look like they're old, You know, as we just heard, I was shocked to know how many weren't old, right? So, some of the exceptions that we've granted in the past kind of tie that together. But my issue with 58 is I don't want to have to do an exception every time, because the first time we don't approve an exception, or we say that exception is not like this exception, then that opens us up for debate. And debate's a good thing, but I'm saying more debate on the state level where we're going to lose.
I would like to add that I have always thought, and especially after the tour, that the board, the community has done a great job of not Disneyland. Not having it being so Western Falls front, and it's not cheap, well done.
Yeah. And I really want you guys to see this video, because you'll see what a lot of these buildings looked like before the false fronts were put on or infill was done. And it's kind of, it's kind of amazing that the changes, but it's also amazing of what it looked like, 40 years ago. So 45 years ago, I think, is when that video was made. So it, as Brad was saying, I got a little bit of history in that town, but, and I remember when there was openings in between the buildings and when they were built, and I was on this board on a lot of those when they were infilled. So, it's that discussion, or that contemplation of what that needs to look like, because if it looked exactly like the one right next door to it, it doesn't look right. If it looked something a little different, kind of period correct, then that's kind of what has made the street flow, in my opinion. But since then, I've done a little research on some buildings types and things, 1880s, 1890s type of buildings that that I'll share with you guys after the meeting. I'll summarize this and send it out to everyone, or I'll send it to John and he can send it out. But some of these are extreme, they're big buildings, but some of them are not. But I just kind of wanted to show, other than Western false fronts, what were happening in cities, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when, Willamette was being created. So.
Great. Okay. Out of curiosity, given the fact that the walking tour was focused on the commercial design district, which was really sort of driving a lot of the current discussion by the group, would a walking tour of the historic district, of the residential portion, be useful, or other parts of the city? I'm just curious.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
That'd be
okay,
great.
yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about that.
And then also the overlap between our historic district and the National Registry district.
Yes.
They sort of blur together to me at the moment.
Yeah, they
As I'm
do a
looking
little.
at a map.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
You got, before the weather turns poor, do we want to do a walk of the homes also?
It might not be a bad thing. I mean,
Because then we can kind of show differences of why, some of the, because there's a lot of projects that we've approved over the, last 10 or 15 years in the neighborhood that, you'd walk through and think that they were original and not, or why they don't look original on some.
A tool that you might use while you're doing that tour would be remember we did the story tour that should be, available on a mobile app, so you can use that as you're walking and guiding.
Yeah, there's also the neighborhood association's walking tour. We don't have to start it at Fields Bridge, but we could hit some highlight points of different houses, of what style of house they are and when they were built and things like that, if we wanted to.
Okay.
The app.
Well, it's not an app, it's the story it's the story map. And if you go on our website, you go down to historic resources and you click through to the Willamette Historic District at the bottom, it should be a story map tour, and that's just, it should pull up, and it's the story, and that was our CLT grant 2 years ago, where we have pictures and descriptions of each building, and it goes as a, it's supposed to be accompanied through a tool or a guide as you walk through the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Lynn, could you send that link out to everybody after the meeting, and that'll give people time to navigate it a little bit.
I like the idea of doing that tour as
Yeah.
well. I'm just wondering on the timing, because our September 17th meetings
Yeah,
probably gonna be focused on preparation for.
the joint meeting, correct.
I'm thinking of it as not as not as the September 17th meeting, but as another just a meeting that we go on like
Yeah.
we did
Yeah.
last month.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we can do it. Yeah, that's easy enough to organize.
You know,
So,
we could easily spend a couple hours walking through the neighborhood and see, you know, as much as we really wanted to, you know.
well,
Yeah,
yeah,
because there is differences between, you know, the overlay district and the historic district, not only in architecture, but in what we can and can't approve, you know, so it would be nice to not go in with our approval hat for the neighborhood when we go to a commercial district meeting, and when we go to a commercial district process, we, you know, aren't wearing our vice versa, you know, we're not thinking it all has to fit the neighborhood, you know? Because they are two separate areas, you know? And I think, you know, my personal opinion of this is that's where we get hung up a lot of times is, you know, people think that it has to have the wooden windows and it has to have the wooden siding and all that kind of stuff. Where in the overlay district, we don't have to do that, you know? And that's to my example of all the variances and the approvals, you know, we need to keep those two areas kind of separate in our mind.
well, at the next meeting, I can come back with an idea of what those tours might look like. And then we can
Okay.
maybe talk about scheduling those. If that, in terms of that, and sort of assembling current resources and some maps, and just that way everyone has a good idea of what it's might look like. So
Yeah.
It sounds like we're getting into late September, October.
I think so. And so-
Yeah.
October's usually.
Yeah, we're gonna pray for good weather until November, right?
Lucky.
Yeah,
Otherwise, bring your raincoat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Any other thoughts on the walking tour from last month? In terms of this? Anything that didn't go well, anything we should avoid next time? In terms of that, other than the heat? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Excellent. Well, again, thank you both, John and James, for the great history you brought. So I appreciated the stories. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
You know me, I'm afraid to talk in front of people, so that was really hard.
Fair.
All right. So item number 6, discussion of draft mission statement.
Yeah, so in terms of this, we talked in the past and sometimes the HRB has felt unsure of your duties and responsibilities in terms of where your authority comes from and what you should be focusing your time on. That's a common experience of some of the community advisory groups. And so we had talked about adopting a mission statement, you know, and then the part of this would be one of the topics of the joint meeting with council as well. And so ultimately, because council also has to approve any mission statement, they have to, in terms of council does the actual adoption, since the HRB serves at the pleasure of city council. So at the last meeting, I presented a summary of where the HRB gets your authority. in terms of any responsibilities, where in the municipal code, development code, the advisory group handbook, all these different sources. And then I put together a handout with a draft mission statement. So I'm not, I know the packet went out late, but attachment A of this is the draft mission statement. So I'm not sure, yeah, there's a memorandum and then attachment A. And so I tried to sort of amalgamate sort of like the membership requirements from the municipal code and some of your roles in different parts of the code, along with some common language I saw in other mission statements around the state for preservation boards. And I drew fairly heavily from Lake Oswego since I thought they had a good, solid mission statement for their group. And I've sort of put this together as a starting point. And so it's sort of broken up in some basic sections. There's a purpose statement, a membership statement. There's a statement about meetings and rules of procedure. And then the bulk of it is the role. It identifies 8 different roles for the HRB. And then finally, there's a requirement at the end for annual reports, work plan, and joint meetings. And so I just thought, just to help the board sort of understand, just in terms of communicate to potential new members, and to the public about what exactly we do. And so we can go about this a number of different ways. If you need more time to review this, that's fine. But or I could just kind of talk about each section if you want. I don't know what works best for the group. So any preferences?
You talking about?
Yeah. Okay.
I'd go through it, maybe
Okay.
skip to the role or something, but
Okay. Well, I'll start with a purpose statement. It says the purpose of the Historic Review Board is to advise the city council on matters pertaining to historic resources, parentheses, buildings, places, and archaeological resources within the community. Semicolon, advise city staff and council on the administration of certified local government grants and to serve as an advisory or decision-making body as part of the city's historic resource program as set forth in the Community Development Code. So it's really sort of 3 basic purposes. Advising on general matters of history, advising on the administration of CLG grants, and then administering our sort of historic preservation design standards. And I say both either as an advisory or decision-making bodies, because in some cases, the HRB is final decision-making authority. In other cases, you're making a recommendation to the planning commission or city staff, for example, or council, so for that matter.
Should we be specific about those situations where there's decision-making authority versus those that are just advisory?
Yeah. So this is where it kind of comes into that balance of how detailed do you want to get in this mission statement? Those duties and authorities are.
Oh, they're all called
Yeah.
out in the community development code.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So we could do
Thank
that,
you, yeah.
but it's kind of one of those things where I think, and the community, the development code may get amended from time to time. And so I thought, my thoughts, I think keep it to that.
Got it.
So.
That's one thing I like about it, in that we have 3 different roles for our 3 different designated areas.
Yeah.
And the different requirements and considerations, and that encompasses them all, even
Yeah.
though they have different
Yeah.
characteristics.
Okay. Okay. Chair Manning or Mr. Steele,
No,
any thoughts?
no, I kind of agree that we have,
Or no,
it's in how detailed we want to get it, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's always that balance you have to strike. So,
Right. Yeah, I just hit this on print, so I'm gonna scribble on this thing a little bit, but
great.
And Can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
Tree and plant lover, are heritage trees part of our domain at all or no? Is that all the arborists for the city?
I believe that's the Parks Advisory
Okay.
Board. I'm not sure about the others.
You're
I
probably-
You're correct.
think it's more of a parks function.
Okay.
That's
yeah,
a Parks Advisory.
Yeah,
Got it.
the prep, yeah. So, yeah,
John,
yes.
what about something like, the tugboat rock? How would that fall?
So I would call it rock like a historic resource since it's attached to the ground. Or it's a place,
Yeah.
the boat's more of a mobile item and that's really more of a, and that,
Built in.
And it's not,
yeah.
it's not in a historic
Yeah,
area, either,
yeah.
you know.
I'm sorry, what was that, Tremaine?
The boat isn't going to be placed in the neighborhood or on Main Street or
Yeah,
next
correct.
to any other historic resource. It's gonna be placed in a park, so.
Yeah,
Monuments might be
oh,
worth calling out to. Not that we're big on monuments, but you never know.
yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, because they relate to interpretation or history in that sense, so that they find. The meteorite, for example, or the rock about Port Klaus and the exploded. Yeah, boat, so yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Are you two familiar with the monument we're talking about at the end of? It's,
Or the Fields
it's,
Bridge.
yeah.
Is it an asteroid?
The meteor?
No, you're not the meteor, no, there's a monument right on the Tualatin River. What street, that's a Dollar Street, it's a dollar, the end of Dollar.
It's at the very end of, it's at the very end of Dollar Street, right behind the steel guardrail.
Yeah,
It's something I haven't looked at in years.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. I used to live right
Big-
there.
What is it? It's a
It's
big, big.
Bunker Rock.
it's Big Rock,
Yeah.
and there's a memorial to a gentleman named Klaus, I can't remember his last name, who died in a steamboat explosion
Yeah.
in Portland, but he had some local tie and was buried.
He's lived in.
No,
Yeah.
that,
Yes. And so.
I think that boat blew up right there underneath Fields Bridge Park.
I read it blew up in downtown Portland,
Yeah,
so,
Really?
but either way, he was buried north of there, north of Bellevue,
Okay.
in that area.
it was like
So-
the largest fatality event Portland had ever had at the time. There
Yeah.
were a lot of people
Huh.
who died.
Yeah,
And I think maybe his son survived, one family member survived.
So if you go to the end of Dollar.
Correct.
It ends like right.
Yeah.
there.
it does. it
So
does.
where's the monument?
It used to, it was behind the guardrail, and you had to go down into the blackberries. But there.
You know where everybody parked, Brad, in front of that metal guardrail,
Yeah.
right at the river? Right on the other side of that guardrail, like 4 feet behind that guardrail.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Pretty
I've been there
inaccessible.
1,000 times.
I've
Yeah.
tried to get to
Yeah.
it.
so there have been questions about
We'll go with
moving that to make it a
bicycles.
little bit more accessible. And the question of ownership, the Historical Society came and spoke here 6 months
You
ago.
know,
so.
I think the real question for the neighborhood, not for us, but the neighborhood is, what happened to all those bodies that were in that cemetery when they built the houses there in 1996?
Oh.
And that's a serious question, yeah?
120 feet to the east lies the body of,
Yes,
Yep.
there's houses there now.
yeah, so.
Yeah, there's houses on Brandon. The uphill side of Brandon is where that cemetery was.
Yeah. So, hard to say at this point, so, but. Okay, well. So I think for this, I'll also maybe work in some language about monuments,
Yeah.
about that.
Leave graves out.
Yes, yes, yes.
I like built environment.
Yeah,
That covers boats
yes.
and stones that people have etched.
Mhm. Okay. So if there's no more questions or thoughts about this, we'll move on to membership. This is pulled straight out of the municipal code. So this is just in terms of who can serve on the HRB in terms of you know, just in terms of people, in terms of how you qualify for being on the HRB. So I just thought it might be good just to have it in one spot. So it says each member appointed shall have a demonstrated interest, knowledge, or competence in historic preservation and, to the extent possible, in one of the following fields: archaeology, architecture, building construction, history, landscape architecture, law, local history, real estate, or urban planning. And if possible, at least one member shall be an architect experienced in historic preservation. And the majority of the members shall reside within the city. So I think right now we have 2 members from outside the city. But that leaves 5, so that's majority. I think you all have different levels of interest or competence, professional competence or experience. So I think the board qualifies with this, but just sort of moved here for reference.
Right.
I think that is solid.
Yeah. Cool.
No arguments on my point. It seems good as is.
Okay. Excellent. Meetings and rules of procedure. Again, this also references current practices. Meetings shall be generally held on the 3rd Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. And all meetings shall comply with the Westland Municipal Code, Westland Community Development Code, City Charter, State Law, Westland Community Advisory Group Handbook, Council rules. It's a lot there, but just trying to point people. So,
yeah.
So there's that. And then I think the real meat of this is the role of the HRB. And it's sort of 8 general areas. And so I think maybe I guess we'll just go one by one. So first one is to administer local, state, and federal law regarding alterations to designated historic resources, new construction or alterations within the Willamette Historic District, and alterations or new constructions within the Willamette Falls Drive Commercial Design District for appropriateness and compatibility.
So the Willamette Historic District, do those 3 words encompass both of the residential designations?
Yes, so
Okay.
the Willamette Historic, the Willamette Historic District is the regulatory boundary
Okay.
that we have. The National District boundary is a little bit larger, but it's not regulatory in the same way that. And so. But yeah, and the commercial design district is also, not all the buildings are historic, but you have authority over changes to that. So,
My understanding was the opposite of everything you said right there.
okay,
So,
go ahead.
no, for some reason, I assumed that the historic registry for the national parks was a smaller area and was more restrictive.
So the national district boundary is smaller than the local district boundary. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Section 1 is smaller.
Correct.
Okay, great. That is what I thought. Okay,
Right.
thanks.
Because as I understand the history, the larger district was almost too diluted, for lack of a better word, in terms of non-historic structures. So it was shrunk to qualify, I think, to have a little bit more. So I could be wrong in that, but that's a sort of departmental legend as I understand it in terms of what happened there. I was not around. That was before my time.
Is that district on any of these maps? I don't
It's on our GIS map. I can pull it up now, actually. So it probably is. I forgot exactly the maps I gave you.
I don't see it on any of the.
I think it's on that one you just pulled. This one? Yeah. You open that up,
Yeah.
I don't see it on the key.
the blue and the pink.
Blue is the historic district.
The Willamette Historic. What's the
Correct.
national?
So, let's see here. Okay. So I'm gonna share this screen with. Okay, so hopefully everyone online can see this. So this is an aerial to make it a little bit easier to see. So this is Willamette neighborhood. We've got the elementary school here and Willamette Falls Drive up top. So this blue line here is the local designation. It's a local historic district. It starts at Willamette Falls Drive and goes all the way down to, just touches there 12th Avenue, just past 4th.
Yep.
The National Register is a little bit smaller. It stops at Knapp's Alley. It doesn't include the commercial buildings up there. And it excludes some houses along the south side of 4th as well. So it's just a little bit smaller. A few houses on 5th as well. So, but generally, because it's entirely within the local district, and it's you know, has the same level of protection. So if that helps, I can give you a map about that. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that. And then again, as we do this, because this is an ongoing conversation, feel free to review this and send me your thoughts before the next meeting. So the second item is review and make recommendations to the appropriate approval authority regarding the listing and delisting of historic resources, the movement of historic resources, and the demolition of historic resources. So essentially, what gets added to the historic list and what gets removed from it. So those powers are currently spelled out in the development code, but just wanted to call it out.
Who makes the final decision on those?
Uh,
Or-
That's city council, city council. So ultimately, yeah. So I believe so. I'll have to double check on that, but yeah. So some of these, it's a city council decision. So some of these are yours, I believe. So I can go over that. We just haven't had one in a while. So so delisting and demolition are pretty rare events. So it's just, it happens for various reasons, but item number 3 is to maintain a role in governmental affairs, coordination and public information regarding matters relating to historic preservation in the city. In particular, advising the city council, planning commission, and city staff on matters of historical significance, and participation with other governmental agencies, tribal nations, and private organizations such as SHPO, the Oregon Historical Society, and the Westland Historical Society, to preserve and promote the significance of Westland's historic resources. I think an example would be like the story map we did a few years ago about helping interpret that, or as other matters come up. I think matters of public history come up to sort of providing the forum for this discussion and study and recommendations. So,
I feel like in the past year and a half that I've been involved,
yeah,
we've had one presentation, I think, by the Westland Historical Society,
yes,
and leaving in no contact from any of the others listed.
okay. Well, yeah,
I
so,
mean, I think it's good. I was just thinking, gosh, I wish we could have more contact. with them.
yeah. Well, the State Historic Preservation Office has come in to do trainings in the past, and that's something we could probably do again. So I think, yeah, there. I think in terms of, tribal nations as well, that's something that would be great. And I actually have thought about that at the end of the staff announcements. So I think in terms of future work. So I think, especially with like the waterfront project and everything's going on, I think the city is definitely trying to grow its competence and its relationship, both in terms of cultural competence relationship with the different tribes who have ties to Westland. So, hold that thought, because I'm going to come back on that a little bit. But yeah, no, I understand that. And that's also kind of, this mission statement will also help focus work and attention in terms of, let's make sure we're talking to our partners on these things. So, and then and then also the third item on this bullet point would be to recommend updates to the City of Westland's development code to be consistent with state and federal law and to reflect the community's goals and interests. So in my time here, the HRB has worked on 12 amendments, and the package was adopted in 2022, I believe. That. I think the fourth item would be to
On number 3,
yeah.
I don't know about this people in the room, but I don't have any understanding of what the state and federal law is regarding development, but I do have a feel for the community's goals and interests.
Absolutely.
So the first part is kind of like, I don't know about, maybe there's some people on the board that do have that background.
So I think that goes back to the very appointments, and also it'd be staff's role to come up and say, hey, state laws changed on this matter. We need to change the code. And then we would work, I would hire other staff people who would work with you on the best way to apply that.
Is that development related to any development? Like if a new subdivision is going to come in somewhere and they're going to develop some land, is that what that's referring to?
This would be, for example, like that, for example. So one thing coming down the pipeline I've heard is that the state may be adopting requirements for archaeological surveys or archaeological documentation. So California and Washington are way ahead of Oregon in terms of this for like routine development. This is coming down the pipeline. I don't know what that state requirement looks like yet, because it's still going through the process. The tribes are trying to gear up because they're going to have a lot of say in this. But at some point, the city is going to probably have a requirement that archaeological surveys occur before development. At which point, I, for example, would say, hey, this state is requiring we do X, Y, and Z. And then I would come and say, well, here's what the state requirement is. Here's some options for how we could do that. And then you would provide some feedback as a group and also bring the community goals and interest in that as well. So that's the kind of scenario that it would be.
I see. So somebody comes in with expertise in the law.
Correct. And the city attorney could show up and provide some guidance on, here's the range of things you can do that are all compliant. So that's the kind of thing. But it's a good question, because we're not expecting you to be legal experts in everything, but okay.
I was just going to say, there again, we have 3 different entities. We have 3 different goals, and the federal one has a completely different set of criteria than the local and state.
Yeah. And so again, this is all draft language, and I think as this gels, we can have some more conversations about it. So I think number 4 would be to promote and interpret Westland's history in public lands, in public spaces, and in city communications. So I know that we've drafted out articles for the Meteor, which is the local historical society's newsletter. In terms of that, there could be talk about how, so in the waterfront plan, there's talk of the new waterfront trail. There are questions about interpretation of community history. So HRB can have a role in that in terms of, the parks would also have input, but again, the board could provide advice and guidance on things like that. So I think number 5 would be to increase local and regional awareness of Westland's history and contribution to the community's quality of life. So again, just sort of focusing your efforts in terms of increasing public awareness of stories and history. Number 6 would be support preservation of the character and design quality of Westland's historic neighborhoods for public and private voluntary action. So this could be the recognition of historic landmarks that have been voluntarily placed on the landmark designation list through plaques or other forms of appreciation. So the board could work on ways to honor property owners that choose to preserve historic structures. Number 7 would be to promote Westland's unique place in Oregon's history by developing a program to publicly highlight the natural, cultural, and economic significance of Willamette Falls. I think it's the second largest waterfall by volume in North America. So we have a lot of history there, which I'm also going to touch on a little bit later. But so I think that's somewhere that the board could really focus. We spend a lot of time talking about Willamette. We don't spend a lot of time talking about the falls. And that's really why Westland's here, is the waterfall. So that's something we can focus on. And then finally, to support the efforts identified above through the pursuit of government grants and private donation. And so I know the board doesn't do all this right now, but it's sort of, this is an idea for, it's like a long-term work plan kind of thing. So
Aspirational.
absolutely, yeah. James, you've been pretty quiet over there.
Yeah, no, I'm just listening.
Good.
All these things, all eight topics are very good.
Yeah,
I want to go back to what Brad was saying, is how detailed do we get on each one of these?
yeah.
And even some of the examples you gave, they could change with new state regulations or laws. So, but it is a start.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we put something out there, because it's, this group is a fairly new group, and I like the questions, and I want to be able to, I want them to be able to answer the questions to, the public, or, in a meeting of what's the right thing to do. So we need some type of guidelines to start with.
Yeah. How about you, John? Any thoughts or questions about this, or? No?
Not particularly. I think it's interesting to go over these kinds of documents to sort of refresh your brain on, oh, why are we here? Why do we
Exactly.
That part of it, at least so far, I'm not hearing any things that I go, oh, that's an action item right there,
Yeah.
So beyond the broad, gee, it would be great if more people knew about this sort of stuff, but the meeting has been beneficial in the sense of just sort of reviewing, why are you here?
Yes.
And what, like you was said, what are the aspirational aspects of this job?
Mhm.
So anyway, yeah, I'm just sitting here listening, but I'm very pleased with what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so then I think the last item here after the roll was just discussion of an annual report, work plan, and joint meetings. So right now, every advisory group submits an annual report to council, sort of summarizing the work done this year, and any recommendations going forward for the next year. And so the section just says the HRB shall prepare an annual report for city council summarizing the activities of the calendar year, including the recommendations for future work and action by council. And any feedback or direction provided by the council, either directly or indirectly, for general council goals shall be used to develop an annual work plan for the HRB at the first meeting of the year, or at a time otherwise determined as appropriate. So I think just every January elect officers, and then maybe talk about a work plan for the year. And that's been talked about in some previous meetings about laying out that, and that's not something that we've been consistent about doing.
That was my first question, is like, what's the work plan for this year?
Yeah, there is not a defined work plan this year. So we've talked about it, and we've had drafts come out, but we haven't really committed to that. And some of that's in part done by council direction. the past council directed the HRB work on these code amendments. Or
Yeah.
assist with this, with the development of a story map. Right.
Yeah, and a lot of the work seems to me to be just things that come up,
Yeah,
right? It's,
yeah,
you can't plan for what you don't know.
correct.
So it's, so it's interesting for me to see what's on the work plan,
Yeah,
not having any specific things that we have to decide on or recommend.
correct. Yeah,
Oh, that's where I think 58 is important, is because if we look at what we've kind of mulled over for the last year and a half has been differences in 58 or differences of an opinion of 58 of false fronts or not false fronts, or, you know, if we, you know, we've got Rory on the call here, but I don't want to put him on the spot. But if we go in front of city council and say, hey, we'd like to work on 58 and we'd like to write a, you know, a mission statement or a purpose of what we're doing here, you know, that probably isn't a bad thing to finish the year on, you know. I don't think we would finish 58, to be honest, by the end of the year. But it's something to work forward to into next year for sure, you know.
I think that makes sense too, because you got a lot of newbies on the board here that probably aren't ready to start
yeah.
proposing changes to 58, but over the course of the next year,
Mhm,
Yeah.
gaining, you know,
Yeah.
a little bit of experience and
mhm.
knowledge and understanding, that may make more sense.
Yeah.
The only one other thing I was noticing, like, as I was looking at under roles and responsibilities, it's like all of these actions. It's like, terms like administer, review, review is pretty clear. Administer, what does that mean? Maintain role,
Okay,
promote, increase local and regional awareness. Like, what does that mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't think it goes on the page.
yeah,
It's just like specifics around
Mhm.
what does that really mean?
yeah. How does that play?
Yeah,
out?
and what examples of what that might look like. It would be
Okay,
helpful for me as a newbie.
okay, that makes sense. And so maybe like as a follow-up. like-
Yeah, because our roles and then with just understanding what that means to support.
Okay. Okay.
You know, John, that's a good question from Brad. I don't know who asked this guy to be on the board or not, but he asked pretty good questions. But, you know, even when Rebecca was on the tour, Rebecca was from the Main Street organization that was on the
Right.
tour with us. She said, oh yeah, we did the survey and we did the classifications of all these buildings last year. That was one thing that was on our docket a couple of years ago, was to go through and do that same task. In between the Historical Society, the Neighborhood Association, Willamette Main Street, and us, there's a lot of overlap there. So that paragraph that Brad just read out about, you know, community engagement and getting our story out, some of those things are happening through other organizations at this point. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel by any means, but I think it would be important that we all talk together, all
Right.
these different groups talk together to see who's working on what, whose mission is to do this year, and we'll step back and we'll, you know, we'll then share the results of their labor, right? And vice versa.
So it seems like number 5, maybe, because we don't actively, to my experience, actively increase local and regional awareness, but it seems like it's fair to say that we would support community efforts
Mhm.
to increase local and regional awareness. I mean, you know, it's aspirational. We, you know, only meet for an hour or two,
Mhm.
12 times a year.
Yeah, and to me, when I think about the work plan,
Yeah,
it should tie right back to our roles, right? So
correct.
as we think about our work plan, how do we, in our work plan, administer, review, means, all this
Mhm.
stuff? And be specific
Mhm.
on things that aren't like
Yeah,
coming up,
yeah.
like we have something to review or something else.
That makes
But
sense.
things that we would be able to proactively say, this is what we're gonna do.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's more like setting goals for the year and then working towards them.
Mhm.
Knowing that we do have limited, all of us have limited time.
Of course, yeah. But really, you can, as we grant money or this or that, you can start a coordinated function and advisory, and
Yeah.
sort of, feed a sounding board on some of these things.
Yeah, some of it's just plain operational, so day to day would
Yeah.
be, reviewing, approving, whatever.
Mhm.
And the others would be, what are we gonna do to increase awareness?
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Maybe the work plan annually.
I'm just thinking of it,
Meet with other local
exactly,
Yeah.
like, what,
societies to make sure, to James' point, we're
Yeah.
not looking to do.
Right, so-
Yeah,
creating Plaques when that's a whole other.
exactly, part of that work plan is we make a
Yeah.
commitment, right? And so be
Yeah.
careful what you sign up for, because
Yes.
then it's more work.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of tying it back to my work life, when
Yeah.
you set your goals annually and then
Mhm.
you're held accountable at the end of the year.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And another thing, I don't know if Lynn said it or John said it, but sometimes we get grant money, right? And we don't know today if we're gonna have grant money for next year or not. But when we do have that, then we do things like outreach to the neighborhoods in the newsletter, or a postcard to the addresses in that neighborhood, or something to say, hey, we've got money to fix windows, or we've got money to fix, doors, or whatever we have the money for. Those are the outreach things that we don't know what they are today. But tomorrow, Lynn could say, hey, guess what? There's this grant out here and we have a good opportunity to get it. And, we go forward with it. So that's some of the outreach that we do, but we don't know when we're going to do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hey, James, can I jump in? This is Rory.
Hey, Rory, how are you?
I'm good. I've been listening in. I think we have some good topics to discuss at the joint meeting, and everything that's been said so far sounds fine. I don't want to overwhelm John Floyd with Chapter 58, but I think it's something you all can definitely take a look at, and I think do a lot of the work on your own. From
Yeah.
your observations, and then we can talk about the mission statement and the work plan and anything else you'd like to bring up.
That sounds great. And by no means do I want John and city staff to do all this work. I firmly believe in everyone on this group learning about 58 and what the issues are with it, of just from some of the experiences you've had already, will guide you into discussion of what makes sense. And I think that's something that we as a group, as the HRB, can then kind of put together and then give that to city staff, and city staff will polish it and then move it along, right? I don't, by no means is this a city staff project, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yep.
good. No worries. I'm gonna hop off. I got to get to another thing. But is there anything else you want to discuss before I jump off?
No?
I have one more thing to bring up, but I don't think you need to be here for it.
Okay, sounds good. We'll reach out anytime. Reach out anytime if you need anything from me.
Thank
And
you.
be in touch.
Thanks, Rory.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Do you mind if I go ahead and bring up?
By all
something
means,
different?
by all means, yeah.
It is my understanding that for projects on the Federal Historic Registry, we're supposed to be doing a yearly survey of buildings. And I've heard this mostly from a friend of mine in Telluride, who's been on her historic review board for a long time, who's also an architect. And I know that they go around together as a group. They take a photograph of the property or any areas of concern. They send a notice to the owner specifically to avoid, demolition by neglect.
Mhm.
People just letting properties get so decrepit that there's really no option to
Mhm.
save them. And it seems like something we might want to consider doing. I thought it was required.
Okay.
I haven't found that in writing yet.
Okay.
So that's one thing to figure out if this is just unique to Telluride, but I
Yeah.
felt like there's a certain obligation when we have historic registry
Mhm.
properties that we are stewards to make sure that they stay in good repair, don't have weird things happening to them. And it would also help us become much more familiar with the
Okay.
architectural language that we're trying to carry through and support. So I don't know if that's something we want to add to another bullet point here as number 9, but
Okay.
it'd be nice to know if it's just my imagination or if this is a real thing.
Yeah, I think, again, the National Register listing is an honorific, it's an honor, it's honorific, so what happens if something falls out of, loses its, it loses the elements that make it, the National Register building, then it would, the National Register would be lost, but it's not like this, anything it can't be made to restore it, in my understanding. I mean, we have to have local regulations, right,
Mhm.
John?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's,
I actually thought the federal designation would have more teeth,
So
no?
No, not so much. So,
Okay.
but it's something I will look into because we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
We do have periodic audits by SHPO, and this did not come up in my memory as an action item, but it's something I can certainly reach out to them and go, this question came up. Is this, maybe it's a local requirement. Maybe there's an aspirational, I can talk to SHPO about this and say,
Yeah.
have you heard of this? Or are you familiar with this? But I have not.
I mean, maybe it's best practices. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's not. If it's best practices,
Yeah.
we should consider.
Yes. I think it's,
Yeah.
resource and time allowing, it's a great idea, I think. But I'm not, I'm not sure. It's probably more of a best practice.
Yeah, I think you hit it right there, John, resources and time, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to saying, we're gonna do 10% a year or something, or 20% a year, every 5 years, everything gets looked at, because not that many properties.
I think we would need some sort of authority given to us to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And this is just from the street.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you walk on the street. I mean, just from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
We're not going on private property.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think also if it's just the National Register properties, that's a much smaller list versus the local inventory, which is a lot larger. I think.
Yeah.
So I'll mark that as a follow-up item for the next meeting.
Yeah, and I'll do a little research and ask some questions to people that I know that are more involved.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. Any other thoughts? This has all been very helpful to me. So in terms of I'll do a track changes version for next time and then. we can go there.
yeah, so I'm kind of, I don't know, you guys won't like this, but I'm kind of it's great we talk all about this, but what are our next steps and our actions before our next meeting? Because, we could have the same conversation next month and nothing will be done.
So I think it'd be very helpful if the group sort of thinks about this draft and brings any further edits to the next meeting. Because I think this is also a topic I was just raising with city council at the joint meeting. Because ultimately the city council has to agree with the mission statement and then formally adopt it. So I think next steps would be looking at this, thinking what needs to be done to this in order to share it with council. You don't necessarily have to share the final version, but are you ready to present a draft version to council as a discussion point at the joint meeting? And so I think for next steps, I think that would be a sort of a good next step in terms of that.
I think this is very good and very close,
Okay.
personally.
Yeah, I didn't walk away thinking, hey, there's so much we gotta change here.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
I do think though, I mean, if on the roles part,
Yes.
I just feel like that one, we don't need to have it on the page, but like, what types of things are we talking about with each of the 8? Or if there's a 9th on the yearly or periodic surveys or whatever.
No, absolutely. That makes sense.
That's a question I would ask if I was on city council. What do you mean by this?
Yeah.
And so, other than that, I think everything limited experience here, but it makes sense.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I think too, it's also just to make sure council understands what you're working on and make sure that you're doing it, you have the authority you need, or that you're not wandering off. But I think having a solid example for each one for discussion purposes.
Exactly.
Is solid.
Or if someone asks a question, you may not have to speak to it, but if someone asks a question, we have to have some.
What does this mean? Yeah. I agree 100%. So.
4 and 5, I see as us doing support but not leading.
Okay.
I made a note, to cross out increase and just put on number 5, support local regional awareness.
Yeah.
You know, 6, I think it sends us into a little bit murky, because I think a lot of those items are covered by other societies and agencies. So support, yes, but then having us.
Totally agree. Like maybe in our next meeting, we scrub these a little more and just say, where do we think there's so much overlap that it doesn't even deserve its own, line item?
Number 7 is actually near and dear.
Yeah.
I love this. However, devil's advocate
Yeah,
here.
by all means.
Is our, the Willamette Falls really under our, is that really something that we would be making decisions on and discussing? Or are we simply, again, supporting?
Yeah, no, it's more supporting than advising, but for example, there's been talk about, a new historic district, for example, can be formed at the Bridgehead, given the amalgamation of historic buildings there.
Okay.
There's, how do we focus CLG grant monies in terms of recommending or requesting money for certain certain programs from the state. I think you can't really talk about Willamette without talking about the falls, because Willamette was a sort of mill town to support falls. And so I think it's so I think it's one of those things that really you can't understand the history of Westland without. I'm kind of wandering off a little bit, I think, from your question. But
I simply for my
yeah.
brain to understand it more, again, I crossed out promote
Yes.
and added support.
Okay, I like it, yeah.
And I think it'll be more obvious when the Willamette Falls and Landings region
Yes,
becomes. I mean, we are
Yes.
right in the thick of that.
Yes.
You're definitely part of that big picture
Yeah.
that ties to the falls and
Yeah.
Landings.
And this goes back to your earlier comment about, I think, support community efforts to increase local and regional awareness. So number 5, for example, this goes back to that Willamette Falls and Landings,
Yeah.
the historical society.
Yeah.
There could be with the school district, for example, there could be, there's the Willamette Falls Access Project by the Willamette Falls Trust, for example. And so there are other, you can support those different organizations. And so I think your choice of language about support.
I like support too. It's much more flexible.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. So I like that. So I think it's, I can play with that a little bit, but yeah.
I just want to say, I really like number 6 as it is, because every time we vote on something, we are actually supporting preservation. We are concretely making sure that those buildings and those architectural details aren't just, going away.
Yeah, this is one where I actually tried to provide a solid example to your
Mhm.
point earlier. So, okay. Well, this is all good. I'm really, this is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, so, I mean, feel free anytime to send me more edits. I mean, I'll just have a folder going. And so, this may just take some time with just thinking about it some more. But this is great because I've just been here 3 years and different people have really seen the role of the board differently. And so having a common mission statement, just as a staff person and for you.
It's already helpful.
Yeah, it's just helpful to
Yeah.
me as well.
Yeah.
And I think once we, hit our stride, having, getting it, going through a planning cycle and a year of executing against that plan.
Yeah.
So we'll have our strides for the group.
Excellent. Well, good.
I'll just say this, I don't expect it to be incorporated, but I have a copy of Appendix B of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation.
Yes.
And in it, it says each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use.
Yes.
And then it goes on to say changes that create a false sense of historical development,
Mhm.
such as adding conjectural features or architectural elements from other buildings shall not be undertaken. But that first sentence
Yes.
about how we're preserving
Mhm.
physical record of a time, place, and use, for me, that really feels like I personally would love to see some aspect of that in our mission statement, if it isn't already there. I feel like it probably is.
I think we can double check. I like that. I know the language you're drawing
Yeah.
from. So yeah, no, I think it's good. And
That's federal.
yes, absolutely. And, and those federal standards are the gold standard.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
But, and the city's code reflects that. It mirrors that a lot. No, that's helpful. That's helpful. In terms of why are we preserving, and why is preservation important?
It's like the big picture vision.
Correct. Yeah. Why are we here? Oh, I like it. Okay. Anything else? Any other initial thoughts? Well, this is great. Thank you all. I really appreciate that. Enjoy this group for that.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah,
Pulling
thank you.
it together.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it was not easy.
No, it was actually kind of fun though. So
Yeah.
this was a fun one. Thank you.
Hey, on the feedback that we're gonna give or not give, if you don't
Yes.
have any to give, will you let John know that you're just responding and you think it looks good? That way he's not thinking maybe something else is out there. If you have something to give, obviously give it, but
Yeah.
if you think it's cool, then just tell him, hey, this is good,
That's helpful direction. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll bring it back on the next agenda. So.
And if we talked about it, I don't have to follow up. I assume. I'm
Correct.
taking
Correct.
notes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I'm
thanks.
taking notes. Yeah.
Great.
Taking detailed notes here.
Thanks.
Okay, should we move on to the next item, Chairman?
Yes, so we kind of spilled into this a little bit, but discussion on the joint meeting with the council.
Okay. So I sent out that doodle poll, and it looks like September was not a great meeting for a number of people. So plus a little bit more work might be in order as well. So we're looking, and also, it'd be awkward not having to share there. So we're looking at either October 7th, 21st, or the 4th of November, and we could push it back further if need be, but so it looks like you're not available on the 21st of October. Is that still? And then, and are you listed yourself as not available on the 21st?
October is better.
Yeah,
September is out.
Yeah.
That week we're gonna be in the
Yeah.
country.
this will be October 21st, so.
That works for me.
Okay.
Works for me.
I know it works for Dan. It's earlier it did.
7th works also.
I can make it work.
Okay.
Mondays just do not work for me typically. but
Oh, I
can
understand.
make it work.
Okay, yeah. Council meets on Monday, so that's kind of
Make it work.
unfortunate. Can you? Okay. So
Is this an evening or an afternoon?
this is a 6 PM meeting, so I understand.
Is it right here in this, is it in this?
It's upstairs.
Upstairs.
Upstairs in council chamber. So it's this building upstairs. And, yeah, I know Mondays I know some days don't work for some people easily, but, that's when council meets. So it's, yeah, if that could work, I think Monday, October 21st at 6 PM is really the best time for everyone. So, and yeah, so I will. And council meets 3 times a month, 2 work sessions and a business meeting. And it's better if we're on a work session meeting because business meetings can fill up with lots of small decisions. So, and maybe some appeals as well. Can we done the pipeline? So, for land use projects. So. Okay, so, if October 21st works, I will go ahead and request that from council. Well. So. Okay. I think that concludes item number 7.
Okay. So number 8 is items of interest from the board members. And I guess my first one on that would be, everybody's probably heard of what's happening down at the falls as far as the mill.
Yeah.
No, I talked to Brian the other day and he said that he's hopeful, but he doesn't know of getting funding for a new buyer or funding from the old buyer. The old buyer is done, is what he said. So.
Okay. Yeah, so something just to clarify, I think, James, you may know more from Brian, but as I understand it, if they don't get new financing or new investor by the end of the month, the rest of the layoffs will happen. They've already laid off most of the employees.
Yeah, they laid off 90
Yeah,
2 Fridays ago, and then 61 or 62 left there.
yeah. EGE did reach out. We've been talking to them. We're actually meeting with them tomorrow to talk about as staff. That's a number of things. They have clarified that the mill has until the end of the year to renew their lease. So even if things don't pan out this month, EGE is going to honor that and say, well, no one has to make a decision with them until the end of the year. So,
Right.
so there's that. So, but otherwise we haven't heard much that's not in the paper.
Right. And the last time they shut down, PGE hired, I think, 7 people from the mill rights
Yeah.
and mill manager, people that knew what was going on there, because a lot of things that happen at the power plant go through the mill to make them happen, their water, their sewer,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff goes through the mill to get to them. So.
Yeah.
So is the assumption that it's just not profitable, or are there some other forces that are more unusual since it's such a unique property?
I don't know. I know access to this property has always been challenging because it's really set up for water access historically. The tour were kind of illustrated. Everything goes through small islands. They were hoping, and James, feel free to jump in here. You probably know more about this. When they reopened, they were really hoping to make, to use wheat chaff as a source of raw material. And that just didn't quite pan out the way they wanted to.
It panned out, but it got more expensive than pulp was the big deal.
Did it? Okay, yeah.
Once the farmers in Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington realized that they could get money for wheat, not only were they, trying to sell it to the mill in West Linn, but then all the mills in China got wind of this and decided to buy it, and it took the price higher than what it was worth. So, historically paper is made with pulp and not straw. So, when the straw price got equivalent to the pulp price, then that really made it so the paper wasn't, couldn't make it for what it was worth. So,
Good for them for trying to
Yeah.
take a waste product and make a product. of it.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I've got a friend up in the gorge that has a huge wheat farm, like massive, tens of thousands of acres, and all of his chaff goes to China. It's all baled up, put in containers, and sent to China. And that's happened over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
So it is being recycled, I guess. Before it was just laid on the field and rotted and went into the ground again, which I guess is a form of recycling too.
Mhm.
But
It's hard to believe that's
That's
ethical, but I guess that's how it works with global trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Arizona, the Saudis own a lot of land. They grow hay there and fly it to Saudi Arabia for the horses. It doesn't, global economics are very
And they've depleted the water.
unexpected.
result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, global economics are strange. But
Okay.
any other board announcements? Marina? Yeah.
I was gonna say something. I was just gonna say that, first, we might want to consider having HRB liaisons to like the Westland Historical Society and the Oregon Historical Society and even the SHPO meetings. I don't know that we want to make that kind of commitment, but might be worth considering. And if we did want to do it, we'd probably have to pay some sort of dues to have membership to attend meetings. And then the other thing is I still really want to find these historic stairs that went from the mill to Sunset Park. And
Yeah.
I've driven around and I've taken pictures and there's probably posts about me on Nextdoor. But it's like, there's the
Yeah.
stone steps in the middle of a backyard going up a hill to another. But I don't know what I'm doing at all.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've even put in a request to ODOT for records,
Okay.
cricket so far.
Mhm.
It's still my interest
Yeah.
that if we have these remnants of this old concrete historic staircase, it would just fun to let people
James,
know
where
about
are
it.
they?
Yeah.
James probably
I
knows.
would have to do the exact same thing, walk through people's backyards. I know where they are.
Stayed on the sidewalk, just to clarify.
Smart.
Say
Yeah.
that again, please.
I stayed on the sidewalk, but yes, I was zooming in with my camera,
Mhm.
Yeah.
probably raising concerns. Somebody stopped and said, "Oh, is that house for sale?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just looking at the concrete. I'm not looking at the house." So-
I'm a real estate appraiser.
Yeah.
So James, if you had a map in front of you, would you be able to like highlight the route you think it took? Because I don't even know if
Yes.
I'm looking in the right places.
Yes, I could. So, that's a very good idea. I'll print up a map of that area. I am gonna see my father on Monday. And, at 92 years old, he still remembers, who lived in that blue house in 1934. So, yeah, so I'll ask him to kind of
Pictures I
pencil
can
that out,
send
because
you
I
that
remember him
have-
as a kid walking them.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
I have pictures where I tried to catch a picture of the stair and then the street intersections usually. So I can locate where my where I was when I took the picture, but
Okay.
I'm such a newbie at it, I'm just faking my way through this.
Yeah. Another thing, how the Westland page lets you post anonymously,
Yep.
Mhm.
You should post anonymously so people aren't thinking you're crazy or anything, but say, hey, I heard there were stairs that went from, Sunset Fire Hall-ish, Sunset Grade School down to the mill at one point. Anybody know where any remnants are?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because it might be in somebody's backyard now,
Yeah.
I think I have a picture of that.
Okay. Because I remember them on Oh, it was about a half a block to the right of Sunset Road as you come across the overpass and going up through the apartments there when those apartments were fairly new.
And if what I found is actually a remnant, they're like grown over by grass halfway
Yes.
through.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
The whole like gravel steep alley that I think where it might have been, and there might be stairs underneath there. I'm not
okay.
digging,
Yeah.
but if that's the path, it's worth considering.
So, well, John, can you print me up a map of that area? Like a GIS map, a good map of what, from like Sunset to the northeast.
And I've got a map where I highlighted where I found fragments.
Okay,
So I can
Okay.
scan that and send it to
Yeah.
John and
yeah,
you can.
Yeah, because I'll take that.
Yep.
I'll pick that up from you this week, and then I'll take that up to when I see my dad, and then see, maybe we could meet and just chat about it.
if you happen to know anyone with drones, this might be a good time of year with the grass ground out. You might be able to see alignments
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. I'm not sure what the rules are on that, so that's something that just an idea, but that's a high enough elevation.
The beauty of new drones, though, is if you violate the rules, they give you a little warning on the screen telling you that.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
And I looked on LiDAR maps in case that picked
Oh, yeah,
something up,
yeah.
but I don't think I found anything
Oh,
there.
interesting. Okay.
Okay.
And any other announcements?
Yeah, my last interest of board member, I think we should elect a vice chair.
Yes. We're gonna have to do that at a scheduled meeting, so we can do that at the next meeting, unfortunately.
Okay.
But they can do that as first, since he won't be here, that can be the first business item. So.
Yeah, there you go. And then they could take charge.
Exactly.
I nominate John. He knows the city really, really well.
Well, you can't nominate if we can't do it at this meeting, so.
Just wanted to put the
But
idea into the ether.
absolutely.
In case
Yeah.
Didn't want to be surprised.
Well, then when he doesn't show up next meeting, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Voluntold.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so then the next item, number 9, is items of interest from the staff.
Yeah, there's a couple announcements about things coming down the pipeline. I've talked to a few new homeowners in the historic district, just calling to say, what are the rules about things like paint color? There are none, or things like that. So there may be some applications in the future as people want to fix their houses back up and things like that. But nothing specific yet. So there's an application for a series of solar panels on the roof in the district. And so it's a newer house, so it's not a historic home, but I informed the person that they have to come in for a design review. So that's coming down the pipeline. That's a staff decision unless they want to ask for some sort of exception. But you probably won't see it other than an announcement, but just an FYI, we're seeing a lot of people wanting to install solar right now. So that's something just coming down the pipeline there. We've already talked about the mill, so I'll just say just a reminder, we've been here before and it's reopened against all odds. So I'll just leave that there. But it has kind of informed our thoughts about the next round of CLV grants. So this is money that's federal money that comes through the state to us. We have to match the money 50%, up to 50%. So there's a match requirement on that. And so at the next meeting, we want to talk about some different ideas we've been batting around and to see where the HRB thinks the money would be most well spent. So a couple of things, we can set aside money to help support private projects to rehabilitate or restore historic buildings. I think like a number of years ago, someone reconstructed a turret that had been documented as part of the original construction, but was lost to a storm.
Yeah.
Another one is we're in a moment where maybe the industrial history of the falls may be really coming to an end. So one thing we've talked about is maybe at some point, CLG grant money may not be the best route, but because there are other funding sources, but maybe working on an oral history of the mill, for example, since we still have mill workers there and multiple generations in many cases. So that could be a project where we could do that to help document that. Or more generally, get a more updated background statement for the history of the falls. We've got the waterfront project, looking at our current historical inventories, our discussion about the sort of prehistoric, pre-European contact history of the falls. It's not well documented in our books, you know, so, and really having more up-to-date context statement for the falls area in terms of really helping us and helping the public understand what, you know, we all have different ideas about what the history is, but maybe getting an academic to help assemble that. What does it mean for West Linn? So that's kind of
An academic or somebody from the tribe, you know, from Grand Ron.
So there are 5 tribes that have association with the falls, and so I think it could be a tribal, you know, a native historian, but I think we thought, you know, some like a sort of independent party to do that.
Yeah.
However, it would be working with each of the tribes though, in order to sort of make sure the stories are accurately.
So I think we have to be really careful with saying that there's 5 that are connected, because that's like saying that there's 5 that are connected to Celilo, or there's 5 that are connected
Yeah.
to, you know, were a lot of different tribes that came to the falls, but they were all, you know, peaceful, and they all had rules, and they all came to do one thing, is fish and trade.
Mhm.
But the falls themselves were not associated with the Yakima or the Umatilla or the Warm Spring Indians. Those were always associated with the tribes that now are the Grand Ron Indians.
Mhm.
So that's part of the trouble that the city council and the old mayor and some of the old city council got in trouble with by assimilating all 5 tribes. That's the whole reason that the Grand Ron now owns the Oregon City property.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not
Well,
that property purchase was an FU to everyone else. This is
Mhm.
ours.
Yeah.
So
So
we have to be careful with saying that those 5 other tribes associated with it. They did associate with it, but it wasn't technically their grounds.
Okay. Well, there are different claims and different stories, and I think any
Yeah.
assemblage may just have to acknowledge there are competing parallel sort of narratives here.
Right.
I think, you know, we as a city don't want to speak for each of the tribes necessarily, but I think at least be able to come to some sort of a better understanding of all the players.
Right.
And the nature of their roles, but just as an idea there could be other untold stories. There's Chinese American, or you know, Chinese immigration in the region. Was that in West Linn? In terms of, for example, construction of locks, I don't know, but there's a lot of,
Yep.
I think there's talk about maybe investigating other broader stories that we're not telling.
Yeah, I would be okay with that if it was a broad story that took a lot of perspectives, you know, because
Yeah.
for 150 years it's been one perspective only, really, you know.
Correct. And that was our thought there. And also just as we talk about the waterfront planning, and we talk about maybe some public interpretation of things, we just want to have a better idea about what's going on there. And you know, so I think just that's one idea which we can talk about further in the next meeting. And then I think related to that was also in the Vision 43 project, which is it's a long range planning project along Highway 43. We received a comment about someone suggesting there may be opportunity for a new historic district there's a cluster of buildings identified that I don't have the exact location, but I can put it here, that maybe this is something worth investigating as well.
Close to Bolton.
I believe so, yes. So, yeah, so I think in terms of that, I don't have, recall that exactly, but these are previews. And so just how we spend federal money is,
Yeah.
you
I,
know,
I would be okay with a new historic district if the majority of the property owners in that area would like to join, you know.
oh,
If they-
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
If they don't want to join, then, you know, we'd be just throwing money away.
And I agree, and state law, you know, I mean, allows, yeah, the state law is pretty specific about, you know, homeowner, agreement on some of these things. I think
Yeah.
there's exception for national register nominations, but otherwise the property owner has to agree. So I think, but the first step is really sort of documenting, is there even, so is there something here, you know?
Right.
So,
I have a client right there
Okay.
on Willamette, eligible contributing,
okay.
and I've sent them all the information. They met at a historical reenactment.
Oh, wow.
I was like,
I love
you
it.
guys are perfect for this.
Absolutely.
And that's
Okay.
right, close to Bolton,
Okay,
on Willamette,
Yeah.
eligible contributing.
excellent. A lot of resources up there, so I think, it
I'm
could
sorry,
be
the
very-
water resource?
No, there are lots of resources.
Oh, lots of.
Lots
resources.
of historic resources up there that can be tied together.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I think that's basically it. I think, yeah, that's the big thing. If there's any other ideas you want us to look into before the next meeting, but I think the next meeting will just be about, here's some general ideas we have about projects to spend money on and sort of.
Have we gotten any input from the historic district of, you know, we sent out some cards about a year ago now, I guess, but do they need new windows? Do they need doors? Do they need restoration of architectural detail? Because those are the things I think, you know, are better than paying a consultant or paying a historian to
Mhm.
write
Yeah.
history, you know? Especially like you said, there's other projects, you know, with the waterfront project and the falls project and all these, you know, all these other projects that those projects might be able to come up with some money to write the history of the falls, you know?
That's true. And this may be something where we set aside some money and then send out postcards letting people know about this opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's, but that's something we can talk about in the next meeting, and I'll try and be ready to speak about that
Okay.
in terms of that.